Hi guys, this is Jack with Team Empire, and we're doing another set discussion for set 8 of Overdress, Minerva Rising. Joining me this time is Lupe and the DE expert in our team, JC. How's it going, guys?
Going pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, always glad to be here for these discussions.
I wouldn't call myself an expert, but for the viewers' notice, I do only play Dragon Empire.
That's right.
So
He tried Barrow Magnus once. It didn't really work out.
no.
So, starting off, we'll go through the 5 generic cards. Then we'll go over the 6 glitter / Tamayura support cards. And then finally, we'll go over the new ride line, Shoujo Doji. So, we'll start off on a high note when it comes to the commons. This is Vulcan Golem, a grade 1 that says, auto when placed on a rigor circle, put a normal unit with the same card name as any of your units from drop to the bottom of your deck, and this unit gets plus 5k until end of turn. What do y'all think of this one?
I'm a big fan of this. It's just a very different type of utility that this nation doesn't usually offer. And some people might play this in Shoujo, which will come up later. But it actually, I think it sees a bit of toolbox in that new promo coming up, that Snake Stealth promo.
Yeah, Megalana Zuchi.
Yeah, considering how it converts names to other stealth cards. And overall, it's just a really cool card. Like, I'm excited to see where this has play in the future.
Yeah, I mean, I think, JC brought up a good point with the Snake promo. I think it'll work really well in there. And to me, this is kind of similar to the Gremlin for Brentgate, just being able to put a card back on the bottom of the deck that you can grab later, like a useful card. Plus, he's one of the 5 golems we got from this set, so that's pretty cool.
That is pretty cool.
I'm also glad that Dragon Empire, I've always said for the longest time, it's been under the curse of being an awkward number nation, always having these like interesting units but then they end up being like 6k, 7k, 9k. Whereas now, like, this card, it gains some power and it'll actually get to be like a decent booster or attacker.
That's right. Well, JC, I'm so glad you said that, because the next card is an 8k grade 2, and it's called Thunderbolt of Duststorm Sadie. When it's placed in a rearguard circle or put in the guardian circle, if you have more rearguards than your opponent, it gets plus 5k power and plus 5k shield until end of turn. It seems just okay. It's like kind of a Eugene card, but not really. You can just like plop it down, turn 2, have it be 13k.
10k shields are awesome, but again, this just goes back to what I was just talking about, where they're trying to balance the fact that, oh, you can rush with this card and it'll be 15, but ever since Overdress started, there have been cards that can be 15k attackers, even some on turn 2.
Yep.
So I really don't understand the overbalance. I like the art, I like 10k shields, but I'm really tired of this trend.
Yeah, this kind of harkens back to a little bit of what I was saying in the Brant video, to where if a card can pick up at least 5k shield and doesn't neg to your playstyle, you might want to try running it, but the power number is a little weird. And JC has a good point, because I mean, even in the last discussion, Brant literally has a 15k beater they can use straight from like turn 2 if they wanted.
Yep, it's very strange. This next card's pretty weird. It's called Sublime Lance Dragon. It's a rare, and it says when it's placed on rearguard circle, costs counterblast 2. Choose one of your opponent's rearguard circles, and bind all the cards in the chosen rearguard circle. It's just Narukami kind of on one card, but the CB2 seems a little too heavy.
Yeah, it's a very interesting card. It is very much like Narukami. I think in Premium, people might start testing with this, because you can remove Divine Gauges. You could completely fuck over Astral Poets by removing the 5 force markers, or getting rid of the Astral Plane.
I don't think it removes force markers.
Yeah, gifts can't, they're part of the circle.
Yeah, I just meant to say, like, the Astral Planes, that's not part of the circle.
And equip gauges. You can also get rid of units with equip gauges, too.
Yeah. The premium usage, that is an interesting point. I think it has more utility in clans other than Narukami, having that sort of option. But I actually don't dislike this card existing in Overdress. Even though the cost is very heavy, it is very cool that you could just not only bind one card, but bind a column in a format where that is a very powerful mechanic. Now, I don't think it'll see any play now whatsoever. If it does, it's very, very, very budget or very, very utility based, but I don't dislike this card. I'm I'm gonna keep it safe in my storage.
Keep it
That's for
safe
sure.
in his binder.
Yep.
A lot of binding is going on. But the next card is another rare, and it's Explosive Dragon Cram Stego. Auto Rigard Circle. When this unit attacks, costs Soul Blast 1. Your opponent chooses 3 cards from their drop and binds them. If 3 cards were not bound, this unit gets plus 10k until end of battle. Narukami Premium.
Now, I was
Yeah.
gonna say this card definitely is like a premium Narukami card. It has, I think it's decreased interest in my eyes just because Vowing Saber is a little worse now in premium. It's still a cool card, but now that Stunburst is at 1, you don't really care as much about getting that Thunder Strike up. You care about having a front row empty. But this card is very cool. Like, it's very much a premium card.
Yeah, I don't see much use for this in Overdress. Maybe like in Stoicheia, or like if your opponent only has 3 cards and you can get rid of their Combine Rushers from drop.
Yeah, I mean, I think this card really mostly shines in premium, but as JC brought up, now that Stunburst got limited, it's not as great as people were expecting it to be before the ban list.
One thing that is cool is that the opponent has to bind 3. Obviously they do as much of the skill as possible. So they can end up like binding 2 cards from drop because they only have 2 cards, and then because of that it'll still get 10k power. So you can sometimes get like the best of both worlds with this skill. But with Overdress, your opponent's gonna have at least like 2 to 3 cards in drop.
By turn 3.
By turn 3, yeah. Like, definitely. It's decent. It's alright. I wouldn't call it amazing. And then the final generic card we have is a double rare called Thunderclap Dragon. Auto Rigard Circle. During your turn, when your other unit is placed on Rigard Circle in the same column as this unit, that placed unit gets plus 5k until end of turn. This isn't once per turn.
It's not once per turn. I like this card. I'm a big fan of generic double rares. If I were to be a little greedy, I really wish that this card wasn't a dragon and it was a stealth card. Because like it at least, and we're gonna get to this later, would have given decks like Shoujo Doji a much higher ceiling, because you can combo better. Now, I think it will see play in some people's decks, and again, I keep saying it, but in future ride lines, but right now it's just like good. It doesn't excel in any particular deck, in my opinion.
If this came out like set 5 when Tamayura was revealed, it would have seen play in that deck because the space was less tight. But now it's like really tight. You already have your dedicated boosters for your rear guards.
Yeah, I mean, right now Tamayura is pretty much. I mean, even back then it was pretty much found out because it was a deck you built out of the box. But there was some tech slots or flex spots. But now it's pretty. Now, especially with the new dolls, which we'll get into later, it's pretty much figured out.
Yeah, shame because he's really cool, but it has uses later on. Next up, we're going to get to the Glitter / Tamayura cards. The first card is Heat Breath Wyvern. It's a grade 1 AK power, auto Rigard Circle. When this unit boosts a glitter during that battle, this unit gets plus 5k power. I don't really see this being great, like budget option.
Right. I mean, 13k booster. I don't dislike it.
Yeah, I mean it's fine. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think some people will play this in their list, rather it be for budget or just aesthetic, because it is another 13k booster, which sometimes those can make a difference in what your opponent guards with.
Beautiful art.
Amazing art. Dragon Empire always gets the good art on the commons. Next up is Thunderclap Dragon, grade 3. Auto when this unit is placed in a Rigard Circle. If your Vanguard is glitter, Soul Charge 1, and this unit gets plus 5k until end of turn. Pretty cool.
Again, another cool card. I'll make another comment about all these glitter cards once we're done. But yeah, if you have space because of like you're on a budget or because you're just not pulling the cards you need, then it's not a bad card to have.
It's not a bad card at all.
Oh yeah, it's really not, especially since with that Soul Charge, if you're using it in Tamayura, you could get something in there that you'd rather have in Soul earlier, and so just being able to call it up.
Yeah, or just like use it for your cost for your dolls, like that's just. But again, it's a grade 3, and if you're gonna play a grade 3 in Tamayura, you probably want to play the dinosaur, the Barriodignio.
Yeah.
The one that just puts some soul to get 5k power. Then we have the last like generic glitter, even though Tamayura is the only glitter card. It's Spear Knight of Tinkling Scales, removes Veet. When it's placed from Rearguard Circle, when it's retired from Rearguard Circle or Guardian Circle, if your Vanguard is a glitter, you may put this card into your soul. So it's like the dolls in that sense, a little more generic.
I was very excited to see this card. It was revealed, I think, before the dolls.
Way before the dolls,
and this card is just so cool. Like having a card that basically when anything happens to it, it goes to soul. And it kind of bums me out that all 3 of these cards came out in this set and not in like 6 or 7, because kind of like what Lupe was saying, the deck has a lot of really cool cards coming in that are staples, and the list is pretty much solved at this point from all the testing, and there's no space for like these types of techs. Not saying that the deck needs them, but all 3 of these cards are great budget options, especially this one.
Yeah.
You know, just goes to soul for free. So if you don't have room for the new triple rares, like I would definitely consider playing this guy, maybe the Soul Charging Dragon. And it's kind of a bummer that, you know, they didn't come out earlier, because I definitely would have experimented with some of these.
Oh yeah, if this had come out in earlier sets, this definitely would have seen more play. And for now, like just you're saying, it's not a bad budget option. I mean, you get resources for just playing the game. If you call over him, or if you intercept with him, or if you're facing like Gravidia, you just get resources for playing the game. So I think that's pretty good.
Yeah, and again, just cool art. Man.
Yeah, very cool art. The problem, it's just a constant problem with Dragon Empire they keep introducing, where all their ride lines are very specific. They require very specific support, so any other like support that isn't directly named something or is an overdress unit, you don't really play them unless they're like super strong. Next up is a actual like Tamayura card. It's Scarlet of Flutteringevanescent Life, so it's a grade 3 normal order. It's a Fox art too. You play this with Soul Blast 2, and if you have a Vanguard with Tamayura in its card name, choose up to 1 unit card with Rirumi in its card name and 1 unit card with Rarami in its card name from drop and call them to Rearguard Circle. It's a Monster Reborn, like double Monster Reborn, pretty much, for this deck.
Yeah, it's got the same cost that the first Fox order, or
Fox art, yeah.
Fox art has. I don't remember what it's called off the top of my head.
Neither do I.
It's actually a really, really cool card, really nice effect. Because now that the deck has more doll names, it's actually far more consistent in all of its searches. And so a big problem that I always had playing the deck is I was terrified of my dolls going to drop. And so I would always try, especially with the ones on field, to get to intercept with them as soon as possible before my opponent started playing some sort of damage denial, because they were, not necessarily for the counterblast, but for just getting extra attacks that I could have into drop. With this card, however, you can be a little more careless with your discarding, a little more careless with your attacks, and for Soul Blast 2, get 2 cards back, and those could also be the new dolls.
Another thing with this card that's very cool, it's because it's Soul Blast 2, if you already have the 2 grade 2 dolls in drop, you can actually Soul Blast the new dolls and use their effects, so you basically get 4 cards for the price of 2 Soul Blasts and 2 CB.
Exactly.
So you can fill up your entire board with this card under the right conditions.
Yes.
Yeah, I truly think this card is a great order for. I forgot what they are, even though I played Brent. It's a great order card for the deck, and I didn't even think about that till right now when Jack brought it up. Being able to essentially get a full field for just 1 card is really great.
Something that makes me a little sad about this is, even though I'm going to try to fit this in, the Broken Toys promo is just an incredible card, and even though it's different, it does become a much better order now that there are so many doll names, because you just get to soul charge more, you get to draw more off of it, and
you get to thin more.
And you get to thin a lot, which is really important. So like this card will not see as much play as Broken Toys whenever that promo drops, because that promo is crazy.
I can see it. This is like a 1 to 2 of.
I agree.
Yeah, it's also not a bad option if you are unable to get as many as Broken Toys as you would like. Just bump up the number of this.
Plus, it is double rare, so it'll be easier to get
Absolutely.
than Broken Toys, which is going to be a promo. We're going to go over both these cards together since they are meant to go together. It's Ladies and Gentlemen Rarami and it's Showtime Ririmi. So they have kind of similar generic effects, except for one word. So they both have the effect when this card is put to drop from your soul during your turn, cost Counterblast 1, and call this card to backward rearguard circle in the same column as your front row units. Ririmi calls herself behind a Ririmi, and Ririmi calls herself behind a Ririmi. And then I'll go over each of their glitter effects individually. Ririmi says glitter Tamayura. At the end of the battle, this unit boosted. Put all your rearguards in the same column as this unit into your soul. And if you put a unit with Ririmi and its card name into your soul from this effect, choose one of your units and make its 5k power until end of turn. And then has a reminder text saying putting the cards into your soul is mandatory. And then Ririmi says, at the end of the battle, this unit boosted. Put all your rearguards in the same column as this unit into your soul. If you put a card with Ririmi and its card name into your soul from this effect, and you did not countercharge this turn, cost Soul Blast 1 and countercharge 1. They're great. They call themselves out from drop. You can use like the Ririmi, you can use Ririmi's effect, Soul Blast 2, draw a card, and then use their effects to call them out and have actual good numbers for your dolls.
These are awesome cards. Them being grade 1 is also really cool because sometimes turn 3 for Tamayura, going just the first Tamayura turn is a little bit rough pushing numbers because you don't have the 5k, you don't have Persona Ride, and you're kind of begging for your opponent not to get a defensive. But these cards are incredible. I love how they push the column into Soul. It's like not only a form of resource, but an added form of protection against retire and any sort of attacks for your dolls. And the countercharge is very necessary now that these cards both use Counterblast. However, like these cards just improve the consistency, the ceiling, and the utility of this deck so much. I think it's so exciting.
Yeah, I am very impressed with these two cards. It makes pretty much every turn very consistent, being able to get your original 2 dolls out and then having these boosting them because you use these to pay the cost of Soul Blasting of the 1 doll, the Soul Blast 2.
Yeah.
So you just pay the cost, the doll pays the cost to get both 2 other dolls out. So you just get a full field essentially. Like
you said, the only problem I see with them is the deck becomes really CB heavy now. I know that the new Ririmi does countercharge, but that is like basically paying a counterblast to refund 1 CB. So it can be a little tough to actually conserve your counterblast, but I think it just comes up to the player. And plus, there are times where you don't want to use these dolls all the time.
Well, and I do think for that reason, it maybe increases the argument for Fluttering Evanescent, the new Fox Art order, because these are the ones, regardless of if you're going to use their CB or not, that you want to be Soul Blasting, because the grade 2s are just better numbers for better attackers on Persona Ride turn, and these cards are meant to boost.
Yeah.
You know.
Another thing is, before we stop talking about these dolls, unless you'll have anything else to say, these cards also help the dolls to dodge removal. Because since they put everything into the soul, everything they boosted into the soul, 4 of your rearguards just go into the soul and dodge all forms of removal, which is something the deck lacked.
I mean, I think I said that, but
to just bounce off of JC's and then Zach's restated point. Yeah, I mean, if your locals is filled with Gravidia, this card is very good to just counter her, or I should say counter Burrito, because it won't allow Burrito to pick up her crit, and it'll just pick up the 5k instead.
That's right. Now that we're done with the Tamayura support, we can go into the new ride line, which is Shoujo Doji. Much like all ride lines, we have grade 0, which is the same as every other grade 0. The grade 1 and the grade 2 are actually very similar. In fact, they almost have the exact same skills. So we'll talk about the grade 1 and grade 2. Both of them, when they're placed on Vanguard Circle, you look at the top 5 cards of your deck, choose up the 2 normal units with stealth in their card names from among them, reveal them. And then you put one of them into your soul, and the grade 1 binds the other, while the grade 2 calls the other to Vanguard Circle. And they both have a very similar second effect, which is act from bind zone if you have a grade 1 or greater Vanguard for the grade 1, or a grade 2 or greater Vanguard with the grade 2, you Soul Blast 1 and you can call them the Vanguard Circle from bind. So this is like an amazing ride line for both of just crazy how much these cards actually do for the deck.
Yeah, before even getting to the strategy from the grade 3 shoujo, I just love how Dragon Empire finally has a type of ride line like this, where you have that consistency of both cards kind of doing the same thing and pushing for a better early game, especially the grade 2 being able to call something. And the generic aspect of just stealth is great, because we have amazing cards like Fork Tails. We have some of the new cards coming out because they don't specify, the grade 2 doesn't specify on what grade you are allowed to call. You know, we have some of the new support, but Fork Tails in particular, you know, you call that, you just keep soul charging, get some early rush. I love this grade 1 and grade 2. It reminds me of ride lines like Eva, like Youth Burke, where they're just trying to help your consistency. Not to mention, if you're able to get 2 from both cards, you've thinned 4 normal units from the deck, which is something that, again, Dragon Empire does not have a lot of access to, that mega thinning.
Yeah, I was going to bring it up how this really reminds me of Eva's and Archetype's ride line, just contributing to the deck's overall playstyle. And I think these are great cards, a great ride line. And like JC said, thinning was something that DE didn't really do before. So the ability to, if you high roll it properly, MILF or thin 4 cards already and just see more triggers potentially.
Yeah, and also the whole ride line is built for future card design, because it just states stealth. So any stealth cards we get in the future, whether they're generic or not, it'll automatically be thought of like, oh, can this be used in shoujo?
Yeah, it also works really well with the snake problem.
The snake, yes, it works great with the snake. Let's talk about the grade 3 next, which will actually tell us about the deck's main gimmick and playstyle, which is peak personage, stealth rogue, Shojodoji. Act Vanguard Circle once per turn. Cost, bind 2 cards with stealth in their card names from your soul. Choose 2 of your opponent's rearguard circles, and bind all cards in the chosen circle, and your opponent puts those cards into their hand at the end of that turn. And an auto Vanguard Circle, when this unit attacks a Vanguard, cost counterblast 1, put 2 rearguards into your soul. Choose a card with stealth in its card name from your bind zone, call its rearguard circle, and if your opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, that called unit gets power plus 10 until end of turn. I mean, I like the second skill a lot. The first skill's a little weak, especially in comparison to other removal effects we have already.
I understand that it's supposed to be a nod to old Nubatama. Jack had to explain that to me because I actually haven't been playing the game for more than 2 years?
2 years now.
At this point. But I just don't... I do like this ride line. I don't enjoy how convoluted we have to be about removal, though. You know, especially when you have, some of the most powerful decks in this meta or even in past metas just have, CB1 do all. Yeah. So I'm not a big fan of the removal, even though there are ways to make it true removal. It just seems like we're overextending trying to get a good mechanic. Whereas I do like the multi-attack, being able to just call a unit. There's some really good units that we're going to talk about here in a second that are great for calling from that. But I will admit I'm a little underwhelmed by the first skill.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, grade 3 shoujo reminds me kind of like some of the V cards that come out in Clan Collection, where they're like a little overbalanced. Like Reverse Kokaitis was a card that was, to me, like really overbalanced.
Overbalanced to hell and back.
Yeah, shoujo's not that bad, but it just reminds me of, and like JC brought it up, they're trying to make it more fair, I guess you could say, of the mechanic it's using. But you literally have cards like the grade 2 order for Evo, where it's just Soul Blast 1 bind. And like it's gone forever.
Yeah.
Now there are some cards that, that work really well with that first skill, like binding the ride line, for example, because then if you have, the resource, you can just call them back out, have a free column, and so that's just another nod to how great the ride line is. Mm-hmm. But it's an interesting boss for sure.
Yeah, the interesting part about the first skill is, one, it does have very good targets that you would want to select for your opponent. The obvious one that comes to my mind is something like Obscudeeds, because Obscudeeds, they activate their 10k interceptors, which is very annoying for some decks to deal with. So you just bind those two, since they are immune from choosing. You bind those two, and you don't have to put them on the bottom deck. You can just let them go back to the opponent's hand, and then they'll have to like counterblast one, soul blast one to call them from hand. But if they do that, they won't deck them, and if they call them from the hand, they won't get their effect off to where they get their either front row attack or a crit. Another one is Prison. If they put their Perio Turquoise in front, you can just bind them and then call your stuff from Prison so they don't lose power. And the last one for Youthberg matchup is Maple. Normally they want to intercept with their Maple straight away so they can get them back for Persona Ride turns. You can just bind that Maple so your opponent just doesn't get their free call anymore. So I think the first skill is kind of deceptively strong, but I agree with everyone else where it's like a little overbalanced.
It's just not... There isn't a particular matchup where it's... or array of matchups where it's like very, very impactful.
Yeah. The good news is you don't have to choose a rear guard. You can just choose like open rear guards.
Correct.
Anyway, let's move on to some of the support cards. The first card we have actually helps with Chojo's first skill, which is Stealth Fiend Koumon, or Koumon. When this is placed from Rigor Circle from hand, cost counterblast 1, choose an opponent's bound card, and you may put that card on the bottom of their deck. If you did not put a card, choose up to one card with Stealth in its card name with a grade less than or equal to your Vanguard from your bind, and call it to Rigor Circle. So it's pretty good. The only problem I have with it is when placed from hand, like, because otherwise you can't call it with Shoujo and then do your thing, you know.
That is a bit of a bummer, but I am a fan of it just because like you don't really want to throw down your entire hand just to get like one extra attack. So I do like the extender aspect of it, and sometimes that bot deck will come up in particular matchups.
Yeah, I mean, to bounce off of what Jack said, with Maple, for example, that's a good target to put on bottom of the deck. Because once they get it back, I mean, they could just, if they really wanted to get in a drop and are scared of you like rebinding it, they can call it, then call over it, and just have it ready for a free body. But you can just make them bot deck it, and they'll never see that card again for the rest of the game unless they have a way of shuffling. But that just comes up the chance of rechecking it.
Yeah, it's very convoluted for removal. When I tested the deck, I didn't really see myself playing as more than like a 3 of, because it is technically searchable, but it's kind of hard to like use it. The good news is that Shoujo isn't very CB heavy, so if you want to play this, you absolutely could. The next card we have also contributes to the bottom decking aspect, and it's Stealth Dragon Jakumetsu Arcs. Grade 2. When placed in a Rigor Circle from Bind Zone, it gets plus 5k until end of turn. And then Auto Rigor Circle, when it attacks, costs Soul Blast 1. Choose one card in your opponent's Bind Zone, and then you may put it on the bottom of their deck. It screams to me as like a first attack before you use Shojodoji's effect.
Yeah, it's very cool. I don't think I'll be playing this at high copies because there's another card that we're about to talk about that uses Soul for a much better reason. But it is still nice having more stealth names, and the 5k is cool. Like, there will be times probably where you want an interceptor rather than something without shield.
Yeah. It's just the grade 3, which we'll talk about last, is just overall a better target to call.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, for sure. And I agree with JC. I think this card could be run as an easy 2 to 3 of 3 of at max. I mean, you don't really need to see this card that much unless you want more names. Like some hero lists run 3 to 4 of every hero just to thin more. So if you're going for that play style, I can see people running this guy as like a 3 to 4 of, but I think 2 is pretty...
Well, this also screams to me as like the card you call off of Komaun, because then you can just get the 5k power before you enter your battle phase. And I'm so sorry, guys. We will talk about the grade 3, but I forgot to put a card here, which is this card, Return to the Afterlife.
Oh, that's right.
It is a grade 3 normal order that says, play this, you have Vanguard with Shoujo Doji in its card name. You and your opponent each choose one of their own Rearguard circles and binds all the cards in the chosen Rearguard circle. And at the end of that turn, each player puts the cards bound with this effect into their hand. And if you and your opponent each bound a card with this effect, you put this card into your soul. I don't really see this as like great for one specific reason, and that's because the opponent gets the choice of what they bind, and so you won't put it into the soul if your opponent didn't put one into the bind zone.
Yeah, it's a weird card. I like how it doesn't have cost, but I don't like the quote unquote like plus at the end of it. Like goes to soul. Like I get this deck is soul heavy, but why can't we just like draw a card?
I was thinking if this drew a card after that, like it would be much better.
Yeah,
it has cool art though.
Yeah, I was about to say that. I think that's my only real saving grace of this card is its art's pretty good.
Plus, I don't know how many orders I'll be wanting to put in a deck where like I want to see stealth names.
Yeah, you want to be putting that Gratias Gradale for your only order in that deck.
Yeah, probably.
And then the final card, which I talked about this last with the Archite one, since it works with both the ride lines, is Stealth Dragon Unprecedented. He says, he's grade 3, says auto when this is placed from Vanguard Circle by your card's ability. If you have a Vanguard with Tamayura or Shojodoji in its card name, cost Soul Blast 1 and draw a card. And then continuous from Rearguard Circle. If 2 or more of your cards were put from Rearguard Circle into your soul this turn, this unit gets plus 10k power. Just absolutely a staple in Shojodoji and maybe even Tamayura. I don't know if people are going to play it though in that deck.
Yeah, I like how to synergy with both, but like this card is awesome. Like you want 4 of this in Shoujo. Especially because like you can call this early off of the grade 2 and just start drawing cards.
That's right.
And I mean, this is what you want to. This is what you want to be calling.
Yeah.
You know, it's a. While there definitely could be something like better, more busted. This is an awesome triple rare, and it's at least going to keep the deck alive.
Just keep drawing cards. You want to keep playing this as much as humanly possible. The grade 2, like JC said, if you check top 5 and you see this off the grade 2 skill, you can call on your grade 2 turn, and since it was called by a card effect, you can just Soul Blast 1, draw a card immediately.
Yep.
Another thing, I'll let you get to your thing, Lupe, is Shojodoji going first is a little worse because the card you call won't get the 10k power because your opponent's not on grade 3. So you always want to call this card since it will hit over defensive triggers no matter what, unless your opponent checked 2 of them.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, this guy is a 23k beater by himself, so he gets over 1 defensive. On Persona Ride, he's 33, getting over 2.
Well, 43, too. Shoujo's skill will be alive.
Shoujo's. And honestly, this card is very good in the Snake also, because if you're running the Shoujo Ride line, you can just choose Shoujo as one of your card names, and boom, he automatically turns on.
Yeah.
Correct.
So call 2 of them, I would say, stuttering there. Call 2 cards. 2 copies of him, and then just Soul Blast 2, draw 2 cards, which is nuts. But, I mean, yeah, he's great. I don't know if you'll really play him in Tamayura. That might require some time.
I thought you were going to say Shoujo. I was like, what?
You don't want to play this in Shoujo. Don't play this in Shoujo. Anyways, guys, that's it for the Dragon Empire video. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Lupe. Thank you, JC, for joining me. I'll be sure to get JC on for more Dragon Empire videos in the future, since he's the Dragon Empire guy.
Yeah, keep an eye on Twitter. Lupe will be starting up Dragon Empire Twitter very soon, and just please give a like to any of the videos that you see if you like it, because Jack's working really hard on this content and is very passionate about pushing our team forward.
Yeah.
Based on how we do or how much fun we're having at locals.
Yeah,
for sure. We're definitely gonna have a greater social media presence. We're gonna definitely have a Twitter. We're gonna have an Instagram. Maybe something on Facebook, because I know some other teams, like local teams that we know, they have it. But for sure, Twitter and Instagram.
Yeah. Anyways, we don't have an outro, so bye.